Hey everyone, it's Jamie from Independent Street Tarot and Seasons and Ritual, and I'm here to talk about the first half of Gemini season. I'm recording this on May 19th, and the 20th is when the sun will actually move into Gemini. Gemini is mutable air, and Gemini takes us from spring into summer. And so Gemini being mutable gives us that room to integrate. It gives us the room to leave the old behind and move into a new season, right? Because we move into summer. And so what I find very interesting about this is that in Gemini season on the 24th, Saturn will move into Aries. And Aries is fire, Aries is cardinal, Aries is the self, right? And Gemini kind of rules how we show up in the day to day, how we maneuver the day, right? Because it's the twins. So it is thinking, it's speaking, it is seeing how noticing things, and then internalizing that and then putting it back out there. So the fact that Saturn will move into Aries, who is that I am presence, is really going to change everything about us moving forward. And I think in my heart, it will change us in a good way. I think that it coming in during Gemini season is good because it will give us that room to um, work with this new energy, right? That is going to hit Aries. That 0 degrees of Aries is the creation point because Aries is that first sign of the zodiac. Um, and so Neptune, remember, just moved out of Pisces into Aries. And then it was in conjunction with Venus, who was in Aries. Venus is still in Aries. I just checked. I think she's only at 13 degrees today, but she is out of her shadow, which is good. So she's moving through Aries without any of the older baggage that she retrograded back. Remember, she retrograded back into Pisces. I hope you guys are like, no, we don't remember. But she retrograded back into Pisces and then into Aries, and now she's past that shadow period. And so she's in new space. She's in a new area. She is no, she's knowing who she is now without maybe the old baggage of the past. And that is a theme that we are moving through. Like I think a lot of us understand what we want to let go of. I think a lot of us understand who we are now. And the thing is how do we show up like that? Because so much of the past is what defines us, right? Or defined us for so many years. Like I came on and I was talking about the idea that, I lost my dog. And so this idea that like I'm not a dog mom anymore. And it's like, oh, well, what does this mean now? Who am I now? Um, but I mean, that could be with anything. That could be with like divorce. That could be with like a new job. It could be anything. It could be the school year's over, right? It could be your kids graduating, and moving on. So we're all going into this new territory that maybe we haven't been over before. And so here we are, we're showing up. We know who we are, we know what we want to say. But how do we do that? And so we're going into Gemini season. The sun is gonna go into Gemini tomorrow. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, and that is how we communicate, right? And so we have the sun highlighting that. And then on the 24th, Saturn will move into Aries. And Saturn right now rules Capricorn. Capricorn is cardinal Earth. So Saturn moving into a cardinal sign isn't like it isn't too crazy. The idea that Saturn is going in at 0 degrees, right after Neptune, and then they retrograde back and then come back again at this time with where all the planets are and what we've been going through is huge. This is probably one of the biggest transits probably in our lifetime almost because the idea of these planets hitting 0 degrees of Aries together just doesn't happen. I mean, it just doesn't happen. So right now, Saturn will hit 0 degrees and then it will retrograde back into Pisces in September. So will Neptune and then Aries and Neptune will both be exactly conjunct and go into 0 degrees of Aries in February. So this is kind of like, as we say, like priming the pump, like what, like a sneak peek, if you will, what is going in, what will be going on once Saturn goes in there. But Saturn to me feels home in cardinal signs. Saturn is fine. Even though it is cardinal Earth that he usually works with right now. Um, the idea, though, is also to think about that he was Aquarius's ancient ruler, and so Saturn, the way that I see Saturn is usually through that ancient ruler of Aquarius vibe. Um, and then the idea that he wants things stable, right? With Capricorn. Capricorn is Earth, and they Capricorn, so Earth signs want things stable. Um, and how do we initiate that stability, right? And so Saturn moving into Aries is going to be saying, how do we start initiating some stability in Aries? How do we start initiating some stability um, in a fire sign, right? That is known to, in its lower vibe, be a bully and to pop off and maybe not listen and be hard-headed or hot-headed, right? How do we start to initiate some stability in this sign, um, along with Neptune, because they are in conjunction. They're not an exact conjunction, but they are in conjunction because Neptune is only at 1 degrees of Aries. And Neptune, at its highest is this idea of spirituality, dreams. How can we get there, right? And so it being in Aries is bringing us up to how can we get there to this higher vibration. And then Saturn coming in, again, it puts down that foundation to me, especially with Aries and with Neptune, because lower Neptune is illusion and delusion. Neptune rules Pisces. And so Saturn coming in is like, uh, we've got to have some stability here. Like, what is really what keeps things moving, right? What is really the foundation of that I am presence? Is it something delusional? Are we looking towards false gods, for lack of better words, or false, images, just false, I'm trying to think of idols, right? Are these people really real, or is it just like all kind of man-made, right? And so Saturn is going to bring in that stability because Saturn rules time, it rules boundaries. Um, and it's going to be kind of like I don't want to say like this is like it's going to kind of be like a kick in the crotch, but like not in a bad way, but I don't know what a good way a kick in the crotch would be like. So, but it is this idea that I think we're really going to start to understand, um, I don't want to say our limitations as humans, but our limitations that have been fed to us that aren't real. Does that make sense? Like there's actually so much more we can do. There's so much more that we can think of. There's so much more that we can produce, right? There's so much more that we can achieve, right? But we have to move through these old ideas that were fed to us that were keeping us locked out, right? And a lot of that was based on anger, war, bullies, this idea of not wanting to be humiliated, all those lower Aries vibes. And Saturn's going to come in there and start to even this out, start to give us a level playing field, start to let us understand why we need boundaries and how that is a good thing, and how much more we can actually produce if you want to, or how much more we can receive if you want to, when you have strong boundaries. It is really, to me, gonna start. I mean, the end of the patriarchy is already here, but it's really going to make hold that line of why women or people who present as women, are saying what they're saying and what they're standing up for and what they believe. I was watching a conversation on the Bulwark, and it was with Tim Miller and some guy named Peter. I can't remember his last name. Um, and I was kind of listening to it, but when they got into the end of the video, if you guys want to find it, you can go to the Bulwark and look. It's Tim, and I guess it was sometime this weekend or Friday, but or Saturday, but it was with Peter somebody, and towards the end, you can it's a long it's over an hour, but towards the end they start talking about the manosphere and like bros, and Peter starts talking about, which I was kind of surprised because I mean I guess I was kind of surprised, but I was kind of surprised because this is an intelligent man, but everything that he was saying about why it's important to have like a man cave, and he was saying like the Democrats during the Kamala Harris campaign was just a bunch of women and gay men, and it was, leaving out straight men. But I was just, but all the reasons he was giving. And he was saying like women, which this part was kind of funny, and then I'll kind of talk about to the point I was trying to make. But like the women and everything are so far to the left, and the men are basically what he was saying was so far behind and not anywhere near this that they need to come back and, meet them back here. And I'm sorry, but like, I'm actually not sorry, but like this Saturn going into Aries to me is just holding that line. Like, you got to catch up. Like, there's no going, there's no going back. Um, and that whole idea that, um, women couldn't succeed because they had to take care of men, or they would piss men off, or they had to, behind every good man is a great woman, and this is just that time. This is the time to me that women are just going to keep setting pace and going forward. Again, Venus is in Aries. She's at 13 degrees today. She's still moving forward. Venus knows who she is. She's coming out of that old way of being. She's not going to slow down anytime soon. I don't know when she has a retrograde period, but it's not anytime soon. So she's still moving ahead. Venus knows her self-worth in Aries, right? She's still moving forward. So Saturn coming in there, staying at the 0 degrees point. He might go to 1 degrees, I'm not sure, but staying at that is starting um this to hold space basically in this new way of creating, this new way of being, um this new I am presence that is working with the masculine and the feminine at the same time. Because right now we have to remember Venus is still trining Mars. And I mean, they've been trining now for a month, a month. So, and they'll keep trining here. I guess sometime in June. I'll double check you guys. But so as Venus is in Aries, she's trining with Mars. So she's constantly in conversation with the masculine, the divine masculine. So, you know, Saturn coming in there, holding that space, starting to put new boundaries, in order for things to expand, right? For things to move away. Like we have to start thinking of boundaries as something good, and not just, I mean, I guess it is a restriction, right? But it's the idea, I guess, of the restriction in order for things to grow. Um, and I don't know a better way to say this right now, but it is also interesting that in Gemini, which is known as duality, um, and this is coming in, and so it'd be like restricting and growing, right? So one or the other, um, which is the way we see things, but it's this idea of but it's not the idea that something is being denied in the sense that it won't get the nourishment it needs. Does that make sense? So just because you're setting a boundary with a toxic person, um, doesn't mean that person isn't going to get the nourishment they need. It's just not going to come from you. Does that make sense? So that's a good boundary to have. Or, you know, And actually, I'm just gonna leave it at that. That's a good, I'm gonna leave it at that one. So you can set that boundary because you know you need this space to grow and to nourish yourself and nourish others, right? In a sense, but there's got to be that boundary so you can take care of yourself, right? That's the I am. That's Aries, that I am presence. Here comes Saturn with all his boundaries, right? With all his ideas of time, whether it's linear or not, here he comes, right? And he's Saturn is still in conversation with Neptune. And Neptune in that highest sense is spirituality, is going for it, is understanding there is no uh limitations. And Saturn coming in there is saying, okay, well, how can you get there? You have to start somewhere because I feel like there's a lot of us that do want something new, that are ready for a new chapter or ready for a new venture, ready for maybe someone to get out of the White House. Okay. But how do we start setting that foundation, right? How do we start having the confidence to go after what we want? How do we start speaking our minds in a way that makes sense? That while it might flare up somebody, but it's this idea that you can do it safely. You can do it in the safe space, which was the other thing that was very interesting about Peter when he was talking about man caves and all these things. And I was like, yeah, man, those are safe spaces for men. But it was interesting that he couldn't, you know, he couldn't see that women and I guess gays, I don't know, women also wanted safe spaces, right? He was like getting bummed out because, men aren't, I mean, I don't know why he's saying it, men aren't like to have, talk about sports and all these things and I was like, yeah, you want that because that's a safe space for you guys, but the fact that you can't make that leap in your mind that, oh, I get it now. I want safe space. That's what a safe space looks for me as a bro or dude. Well, okay, now I can see why these people want safe spaces too. And it's like, but you have to bring people forward. I do believe you have to meet people where they're at for sure. Um, but I also think you kind of have to hold the line in order for them to come forward. And so I do feel like that is going to be a big theme in Gemini season, also because on the 9th of June, Jupiter, who's in Gemini right now, will move into Cancer during Gemini season. So the fact that Jupiter's been in there, Jupiter's luck, gifts, faith, expansion, um, will be moving into Cancer on the 9th of July. I mean, the 9th of June, during Gemini season. So we'll start talking about that differently. Cancer rules the home. Cancer is the womb. Cancer is also cardinal water. Again, we have Saturn moving into cardinal fire. Um, Saturn rules uh, Capricorn, who's cardinal earth. So we are initiating so much right now. This Gemini season that's going to give us the space to move back and forth, almost as the idea of temperance. I don't have my deck with me, but that angel of temperance, who does work with alchemy, she has one foot on land and one foot on water, and she has the cups, right, the chalices, and the water is flowing backwards into the chalices because it works with the idea of alchemy, knowing what it is that you want to create, not maybe knowing all the steps, but working with the environment, with the energy, with the things that are around you in order to create this magic, right? And so to me, that is this idea of Gemini this season moving into with Jupiter moving into Cancer and Saturn moving into Aries. And the Gemini new moon is on the 27th. So we got a lot going on, and I'm pretty sure Mercury will also be in Gemini during the new moon. And so I'll speak about that as that gets a little bit closer. But I just wanted to touch on that because this Saturn moving into um, Aries is a big deal, and Saturn is at its anaretic degree of Pisces, which just means it's at the last degree. I always think that that is this idea that we kind of need to look about how we're mastering the idea of Pisces and what it stands for. Other astrologers will tell you that's when the shit hits the fan. Could go either way. Okay, I just like to think it's like you've learned all this stuff. I would like to think that when you got to the end of it, you could say, "Oh, now I get it." So, but we'll see. We'll see. So just kind of mark that on your calendars. Tomorrow, the 20th, Gemini season, the 24th. Um, Saturn moves into Aries at 0 degrees. That's a new creation point. So the next couple days, Saturn will be at that anaretic degree of Pisces. Okay, friends, I'm going to leave it there. I hope you guys are all having a better week. That last week was pretty intense, with a lot of Uranian action. But now that Venus has moved past her shadow, um, knowing who she is, still in Aries, Sun moving into Gemini. I think that I don't know if it'll get easier, but I think that we're going to start processing things a lot quicker. Um, and we're going to start, holding that space for our truth, which will then get us to move forward. I don't think it's going to be let me just say this too. I don't think it's going to be this idea of overwhelm. We have to remember that we're in control of ourselves. If you are consuming too much social media, just turn it off, go turn it off. Just grit your teeth, sweat it out, go for a walk. We are sovereign beings. We are in control of ourselves. And actually, saying that Aries, is that idea of the sovereign, right? Because it is that I am presence. So we're going to be moving into this new space. Saturn is going to be holding this new space for us in Aries. So let it work to your advantage. Okay. With the sun going into Gemini, which is information, communication, how we show up in the day to day, let Aries hold that, excuse me, let Saturn hold that space for you in Aries so you can figure it out on how you want to be and how you want to show up. And even if you have figured it out, let it hold that space so you can start to lay the groundwork, so it starts to make sense to you and the other. Okay, friends, I'm going to leave it there for real this time. If you have any questions, just reach out to me. Um, in the comments below. I am on Instagram, Blue Sky. I have started a TikTok. I am personally not on the TikTok, but I have some friends that run the TikTok for me. So, but if you wanted to reach out to me as a real person, I would say to reach out to me either on Instagram or on YouTube. Okay, friends, happy Gemini season, and I will see you shortly.